Good afternoon everyone, I hope you are all well. Following on from my previous video, I did say that I would like to document my position on all of the important issues as best as I can. Today, I would like to discuss education. I know that any discussion about education can be subjective, it can be controversial, and I'm not about simply finding fault or anything of the sort, because there's very little I can do about that. But what I can do, what I would like to do, is to raise questions for discussions, because in every avenue of education, I do believe that there could be another way, there could be a better way. Speaking from experience, when I was at school, I struggled seriously with concentration. The irony is, the more difficult the subject, the more engrossed I was in it. Nearly 50 years later, ask me the quadratic formula and I can still reel it off. But ask me details about The Hobbit or Animal Farm and I'm probably going to be lost apart from the general plot, because once I had endured the voice of, or the boring voice of this teacher for 2 or 3 paragraphs, I switched off. I was gone. The entire lesson was a blank. But at the time, nobody took steps to establish why I was struggling, why I couldn't concentrate, what the problem is, and what could be done about it. Years later, in my 30s, I went to university as a mature student purely for my own curiosity, will, and as I tend to do, I did throw myself into it wholeheartedly, and in no time we were covering topics such as Kolb's Learning Circle, Honey and Mumford, and so on. And I began to look at that and reflect on it and think, wait a minute, there are people out there who have specialised in researching the learning styles of people. But why am I being presented with this now in further education, almost at the end of the academic journey, if you like, rather than at the beginning where steps could have been taken to help me when it really mattered? At the same time, there are other experiments that I am aware of which have captured my mind. There's an Indian professor called Sugata Mitra, I believe. He's been on TED Talks, and I'm a huge fan of his. A few years ago, he conducted something called the hole in the wall experiment. He started by embedding a computer in a wall in a remote village in India where the children didn't even go to school. They couldn't read or write. And when the children gathered round exciting at this machine, asking him questions, he simply said, well, I don't know what it is. Play around with it and I'll come back in a couple of months and perhaps you can tell me what it does. They monitored the children with secret cameras, and in no time the children were investigating it, discussing it. One of the children became the teacher and explained what she had learned to the others, and in no time they were browsing the web, they were making music, they were making videos, they were making animations. It was absolutely incredible. In fact, it was so incredible that he was invited to a school in Gateshead where he conducted an experiment called the Granny Cloud. Basically, they had volunteer old ladies who were beamed into a small room with a handful of children, maybe 4 or 5, and all they did was behave like a grandmother. That's good. What's that? How does that work? Tell me more. Explain it to me. And in their excitement, in the haste, the children couldn't explain what they were doing fast enough to the grandmother. They discussed it, and that's where the magic happened. That's where the learning happened. And Sugata concluded that one child on their own may not learn, may not concentrate, may not retain concentration, but a small group of children interacting and discussing, that is where the learning happens. His experiment was so successful that In the tests, his group of children who had learned this way achieved test results of 76%. But to further reinforce the results of the experiment, they also took the exams again without access to a computer. The other children who were taking the same exam had learned conventionally. And Sugata's group, once again, without any access to computers, achieved 76%. It was absolutely incredible. And that is why, although I do believe people should have the freedom to choose, I don't think that one child homeschooled on their own is the best way. And that's before we look at the the social side of things, of course. But then moving on to further education, I also have to ask the question, why are so many young people being cajoled into enslaving themselves to debt for degrees that will not bring them a prosperous career? Degrees that may be worthless to the marketplace, degrees like cotton wool study or golf or whatever it may be. Yes, there is a place for certain studies within a university, medicine, dentistry, teaching, etc. And I'm in favour of encouraging more people to study these subjects, because we have known for decades that we were heading for a shortage of doctors and nurses and dentists. But what was done to encourage them? And why instead are we churning out thousands of students with an ology and just a lot of debt that's no good to anybody? Perhaps there could be some form of credit system, and if they were to study as a doctor or a nurse and serve X amount of time within the NHS, a certain portion of their debt on top of what they pay could be credited. That I don't know, but why should it not be discussed? But what about students who do want to study? Perhaps they want to study business studies. Well, I would put it to you, rather than go to university and study an MBA, for example, business studies followed by Masters in Business Administration, why not consider something like a QCF, Qualitative and Credit Framework? I believe it's called the RQF now, or yes, RQF. I'm strongly in favour of that, and in business in years past, about 10 years ago, I was actually an assessor up to level 3, I believe, and that's where I learned about it, and I believe it's a wonderful learning system, because unlike university, where if you decide you want to study criminology and law, and at the end of year 1 you wish to switch to teaching, or vice versa, you are left with the debt and a year has gone down the drain. Whereas with the QCF, you build up credit, and those credits count towards your ultimate grade, no matter what you study. So once you reach level 4, if you go off and study something else and you reach level 5 and 6, you will have the equivalent of a degree and eventually a PhD, should you so wish. However, unlike university, where business students have a degree based on regurgitating what they have written about, those who have studied business via the QCF route have actually documented what they have done, and at the end of it they are far more attractive to industry than the university student who up to that point possibly has not had a job, full-time job in their lives, and they are walking away with 50,000 or more in debt. Whereas via the QCF route, you can start off stacking shelves at Tesco. It really doesn't matter. But as your grades rise, you will be promoted. And by the end of it, you will not only be earning more than a starting salary, you will not only have a qualification that is more highly respected than a degree, but you will also have no debt. Or is the plan just to enslave all the young in debt, in which case I'll probably be in serious trouble for opening my mouth? I don't know at this point, but I want this discussed, because as far as I'm concerned, if my actions can encourage dozens to become hundreds, to become a few thousand people who actually rethink theirs or their children's educational strategy and choose a better solution, then it would have been worth it. And at this point, I believe that that's the most I can do. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback. As always, I don't mind if you disagree. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye for now.